My name's Alana Olson. I'm a fourth generation landowner in Bulloch County. I grew up on a peanut farm. My grandparents were Sidney and Eloise Sanders, and they bought that farm from working in the shipyard in Savannah during World War II. It's a hard-fought thing to have land and keep it and have a family legacy, okay? So that's what we're talking about too, and we're not just talking about water. And I know we don't own it, what's under our land. That's how the laws say, but there ought to be some more consideration for the people. And so if you'll bear with me, I have some points, but I'm sure gonna have to look at my notes. I don't live in Bulloch County anymore. If I was a registered voter, I'd sure be signing those referendums. I'm letting everybody know that I know, big family in Bulloch County, please do. I talked to the lady at the hotel lobby today and talked to her and got her on our water page, and encourage you all to do the same. There's many variables to account for when we look at things and we look at the modeling, and I so appreciate. First off, I'm not here on any sort of official capacity. I'm here as a landowner in Bulloch County, though I don't reside here full-time. I do have 2 properties here, and I'm just a girl from a peanut farm that loves the earth and thinks we're called to protect it. And so in addition to that, I've also been doing environmental protection work for about 17 years. And so I know that there's a lot of good thoughts from experts that are roaming around that don't necessarily come from an agency that lets a permit, and I think we need to listen to all of them. Growth in other areas. It's good to see these wells modeled. What's better to see is the cumulative impacts of all the wells we expect to hit this aquifer, because we're talking about pulling enough water for a small town. What about the towns that are going to grow up too, okay? And so there's been some very noticeable, careful language here tonight, and I want to draw your attention to that, and I want to draw your attention to the Riverkeepers pending litigation, because this speaks to it in beautiful detail. If you haven't read that 18 pages, I encourage you to. But the thing is, we've all, several comments here tonight, asked, well, what about, you talk about the water here, you talk about tortoises there, you talk about ground disturbance, There is a document. It's called the National Environmental Policy Act. It's called NEPA. It's a beautiful piece of legislation. It's the first thing I did as an environmental specialist, and it's how I learned environmental. And I can tell you that there's no conformance to NEPA and the thoughtful planning that is required, because the document that should have the impacts of everything that we're all asking about is called an environmental impact statement, and that's what wasn't done. And we can tell you why it wasn't done, and I'm not pointing blame at an agency. I'm saying that agencies got poor information, and there were people who gave them information at the same time they were telling EPD we need water. They were telling the Army Corps of Engineers we don't need no more water. So when the Army Corps looked at this, they had no reason to believe that there was any water impacts to assess. And the term no one has said tonight and has been careful not to say is the word significant. I've heard preferred, acceptable. A significant impact is a regulatory term within the NEPA statute. And we need to know if it's significant or not. That's not EPD's job to tell us, it's the Corps of Engineers' job. But there should be interagency coordination when something this huge is happening, and I don't see that happening the way I am used to seeing that happening as a federal NEPA practitioner, as a professional who does this, okay? I don't see that happening. Number 3, again, that's not EPD's place, but they're modeling. All this data sure should have gone in the Corps of Engineers analysis. But this came way later, right? Way later than breaking ground. That's the problem. And it was purposely timed to be that way, from what I can see looking at all the documents in open records request. The mitigation fund is woefully inadequate. I think everybody knows that. It's a double-edged sword too, because we ask for more mitigation funds, it's more taxes we gotta pay. It's coming from us. And I have to give my husband credit for this, okay? But this is socialized losses and privatized gains. Point number 4. what can we do to reduce the amount of water they need? I sure would like to see a checkbook ledger for how much water we get to the amount they need. Because I work in facilities engineering. I'm not an engineer, but I work on that, and I work on water programs and water compliance for a living. I'm called to do that work. I think it's my calling for a reason, and which is why I see all of this that makes me so darn mad, okay? Because there's a way to do it right. There's a way to have the analysis done and the utilities hooked up before anything starts going vertical that could be a vendor on a mega site building something, okay? What are they using the water for? Well, a lot of industrial uses, they don't require potable water. It really does come back to what my colleague from Coastal Communities United, Kristen, said. There was an article out this week that talked about the cost difference. $382 million saved by putting these groundwater wells in instead of using surface water. Ooh, we put some pipe in the ground to get them some wastewater service. We could have put a pipe right next to it to get some water. And we didn't do it. They made a decision based on money. This sounds like a socioeconomic problem. This sounds like environmental injustice to me. Finally, I would like to close with, I grew up with wonderful, pristine well water. Mr. Noel Creasy put all the wells on our farm. I would have liked to have heard his opinion on what all was going on here. But that is pristine water. What a great resource to have. Bulloch County, as much as I wish it were different, is 70% below the poverty level. Okay? And maybe some big industry jobs would help us, but I don't think this is the answer. And the problem is when you have impacts to the aquifer that we don't really understand because they haven't been looked at as a cumulative impact umbrella like the NEPA statute requires. What if we have something else that happens? What if we have something different than what this, I think, honest analysis for what you're required to consider is, but I don't think they're required by statute of their job to consider all the things I want them to have to consider. Okay? And I know I got a job, I got to pay by rules, multi-jurisdictional rules, and oh, it gets complicated, but you're supposed to be called to do the right thing, right? And I can see a farm that my family has owned since 1945, have a pipe down Twin Forks Road with a water meter. And could everybody in this room afford a water bill if you had one more bill on your monthly income? That's where we're headed, I fear. I'm not the water expert. I can't do groundwater modeling, but I know that there's some variables that are important that have been totally left out of the conversation. And as citizens, we need to know what that answer is. And until we have a proper environmental analysis of the entire project, we haven't met that mark. Thanks.